This video is from my series that walks you through how to build a career in film and television production.
Okay, thinking outside the box. One of the things I like to talk about, and it's one of the things most people don't understand about our business, is we are working in a copycat business. Something will work. You'll see 10 or 20 of those things in television or features. You'll just see one after the other that copies the thing that works. Once in a while, something breaks through. And when it does, you'll see copycat of that over and over in television and feature 10 or 20 times. It could be over the next year, 2, 5, whatever. It's a copycat business. The breakouts don't happen very often, and the idea is to try to be the person who's responsible for that thing breaking out, whether it's a writer, director, producer, whatever. That's the goal, right? And as far as the work we're doing here, yes, the industry is a copycat business. And I'm talking about the content we see in the wider world, the shows, the features, all the rest of it. With the work we're trying to do here, we want to stand out. We want to make ourselves look and sound different, engaged, interested, relevant, so that we stand out from the rest of the people who are just copying everything they see. And I'm talking about the entry-level people, not the big, wider stuff. You're not going to compete with those folks. You're competing with the thousands of new entrants into the industry who are either trying to level up in a new part of their career or trying to gain access to the industry. And I get those DMs all the time. Hey man, will you read my material? Will you read my script? You want to check out my short? The truth is, I'm a CFO. I don't have anything to do with the creative part of the business anymore, and I haven't for at least 12 years now. So for someone to send me a request to read their material or connect them to somebody without really understanding who I am and what I do, really more importantly, what I do, no one really gives a shit who I am. The reality is I'm just a cog in a big giant wheel. I'm one guy. So for someone to send me a request to read their material, they don't understand my business. They don't understand what my participation in the business is. I don't do that for a living. And to send me the material is just a misunderstanding. And I'm never going to engage with that person because they just don't understand my business, my place in it, and exactly what I do. So we're trying to stand out. We stand out in how we connect to people, and we stand out by the material we create. The way we stand out is by doing something different and trying to get outside of the box and get outside of the traditional thinking. The box for most creatives is I enter every fucking competition I can get into. I try to run the festival circuit so people can notice my work. That's all great. You should continue to do that. Don't stop. Don't abandon it. That is a traditional track. We want you to continue to do that because that's where you're going to work over and over, creating repetition, learning what works, learning what doesn't, developing your skill, building a body of work. That is important work. Don't stop doing it. But in this particular track, what we're focusing on is the entry-level job or the entry-level content that we're creating if you're wanting to level up. In other words, a director moving out of one vertical into another is going to level up, and they're basically starting over. They're going to get the small shows, they're going to get new and interesting things, but they're not going to have an opportunity to be doing big projects, stuff that's mainstream. They're going to have to prove themselves in that vertical. Same thing with a writer. New writers or a writing assistant who's trying to level up into being a writer, that writer's assistant is never going to be pitching pilots and pitching series and pitching ideas to a network. It's never going to happen. You might pitch to your boss, you might pitch to a showrunner who will then take it into a network and see if they can make a sale. But the reality is, as an assistant who's trying to level up, or a director who's trying to level up, or a brand new entrant into the industry, you're not going to be doing anything all that creative, different, and outside of the box. The way you're going to get outside of the box and the way you're going to distinguish yourself is how you educate yourself about the business, the people you're talking to, and what you're striving for, what your goal is, what vertical you want to play in. I use this example a lot. If you want to work in dramatic television, going to the people who make Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or whatever singing show, if you go to those producers and talk about directing or writing dramatic television, it's going to go nowhere because they don't do that. They're not networked in that industry. It's very uncommon that they cross over. So you're going to distinguish yourself in this track by virtue of understanding the industry, the people you're connecting with, and networking within that vertical. So copy versus creative. When to copy and when to be creative has a place. If you're starting out, you will not be thinking outside of the box. Learn the system, learn the process, learn the landscape, emulate the work. And what I'm talking about is when you get into that job, that first job, or the new job as you're leveling up in your career, whatever it is, You're learning a system, you're learning a process. Yes, if you're a director or a writer, yeah, you got to bring creative chops. I'm not saying you don't be creative. I'm not saying any of that. You still got to bring your creative chops, but you also have to learn the system, the process, the landscape, and emulate the work. For example, if you're a new writer and you're brought on staff onto a show, the writers on the show, the creators on the show, have a writing staff for one reason, so that they can do the vast majority of the heavy lifting of writing. Writing is a complicated, difficult process that takes time. You can't just punch out a script in an hour, unless you're Aaron Sorkin, but he's a freak and he produces a crazy amount of content. And there are people like that. Stephen King's another, but these are one or two people out of, tens of thousands of writers. So the reality is, if you're going to be a writer, a staff writer on a show, your job is to emulate and copy the show, the tone, the form, the format, all of it. You're copying it so that when your draft gets turned in, the showrunner doesn't have to edit it very much to make it fit into the format of the show they're making. You get credited as the writer, but the truth is, you're just emulating the showrunner. You're just there to do the heavy lifting of creating a draft. So do you have to bring creative chops? Yes. What's more important is that you're copying what the showrunners created, or what the original creator of the show had put down on paper and had put into the pilot, or the first episode, or the first few episodes. So that's an example of bringing your creative chops, but ultimately you are just copying what somebody else has created. Now, in the process in this track, we have to find a way to break out of the model so that you can distinguish yourself from the rest of the other people who are doing the same thing as everybody else. So how do you do something that demonstrates that you have skill, that you have some kind of creative chops in order to get the attention of the development executives who will ultimately hire you? You don't want to copy. So demonstrating your creative chops requires that you aren't just a flat out copycat. So the South Park guys is a perfect example. The South Park guys created a short film about being a ride operator at Universal. And I think one of them was actually a ride operator. And it was really funny. It was kind of, I don't remember how it wound up circulating around town because the internet didn't exist at the time. I believe it was on VHS. It was essentially, I don't know how the fuck they did it, but they got these fake porcelain hunting deers and they put them all over the lot and they kept shooting them in different places, and they kept calling them out as if they were on the ride at Universal. I don't know how they did it. It's really funny. It's been years since I've seen it, but that piece got in the hands of George Clooney. George Clooney was looking to do a video Christmas card or a holiday card for the people in the industry, for the executives in the industry that he was working with. And he hired Trey Parker and Matt Stone to create a short little film that he could send around on disc. That film was Jesus versus Santa Claus, and it was the South Park kids watching Jesus and Santa Claus fight over whether or not it was about Jesus's birth or about gifts. And the kids were obviously on the gift train. They didn't care about Jesus's birth. They cared about the gifts. So it was super irreverent. It was really funny. It was just filthy as shit, and it was bloody as hell. And it was in the animation style that turned out to be South Park. Well, that went up. Clooney sent it around to everybody he worked with, which then started getting sent around town. It's like, who the fuck are these guys? How do we work with them? How do we get connected to them? This is amazing work. So that's how they wound up getting connected. That's how South Park was created. And ultimately it wound up doing however many seasons. It's been a dozen or more. And they did really well for themselves, obviously. So that's an example of two creators who skyrocketed to the top. They started out making this one little piece that then turned into a little bit longer piece that they got paid for, a little bit, not a huge amount of money, and that turned into creating a series. So that is the progression of how these things go. They essentially had thought outside of the box. How do we create something that's different, that's going to get the attention of the executives in town? That's how they did it. And then that executive happened to be Clooney, which then got sent around to all the senior people at the studios and the television networks, which led to them or gaining access to creating a show. And, in the modern age, that happens with YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, insert the platform here. They all can be used. Look, I don't like giving away your shit for free to some fucking tech douchebag so you can earn literally scraps, pennies against advertising dollars, where they're earning billions of dollars. In fact, truth is, I can't stand it. But can we use it to our benefit? Yes. I don't like it, but it's a platform where you can put something up and try to get people in front of your material. Absolutely. And you can do it using an advertising model for like $5 a day for 5 or 6 days. You know, you can hit a particular zip code of where your target might exist. I'm not suggesting you do this, but this is a creative way of thinking outside of the box. Use Facebook and YouTube and Instagram as a way of targeting the executives by zip code if you know where their office is. That's possible. You can pick a management firm, creative artists, for example. Use an agency. Use the biggest, right? You know where creative artists are. They're in Century City. You can target that zip code with your creative. So when the people at creative artists show up to work, if they log into Facebook or YouTube, they're going to get fed an ad based on that zip code. And you can also use keywords and lifestyles and job titles and various other things to focus in and hone in on finding those people, spending $5, $10, $20, $25 a day for a week or two, so that you can drive an agent or a manager or an executive to your creative so that they can learn something about you, so they can see your creative. Targeting directly by zip codes, particular company, target an executive, a job, whatever. There's lots of data out there about how to do this on the internet. But that's a creative, out-of-the-box way of thinking, as opposed to going, hey, CAA, receptionist, picks up the phone, says, creative artist agency, how may I help you? And you say, hey, I would like to talk to an agent about click. You're just not going to get put onto someone's desk that way. But if you can create an environment where they're seeing your creative, and then they're being driven to a page that has your phone number on it, and you're spending $5 or $10 a day, maybe 25 at the most, with a little bit of budget, where they can see your creative and they click on it, and then they get driven to just a single lead page, which has your information on it in terms of how to get a hold of you. That's available, and it's worthwhile doing. Now, I'm not suggesting you put out your email and your phone number in the wider world, but you can use a Google email address that then forwards to your actual email. You can use a phone forwarder for like $11 a month. You have a particular phone number, someone dials into it, it gets forwarded to your cell phone. After you're done running this particular campaign, you can get rid of the Gmail address and you can get rid of the phone number, and you've only spent a little bit of money. Remember, technology is useful in many ways. It's ephemeral, it's cheap, it comes and goes at will, and it's worthwhile using. So think creatively and find a way to stand out. Are you gonna run Facebook, Instagram, and Google ads of your content to the zip code of your target, their office location, or using lifestyle metrics, keywords, job titles, URLs they might drop to? These are the kinds of technology that you can use to benefit your career, to advance your creative, to get in front of the people who can actually help you move your career forward by getting you the meetings and getting you access to the places where you can get a job. If you're a writer, director, actor, do a table read of your script and record it. It doesn't have to be complex. It can be like serial or a podcast. Record it close proximity so it doesn't sound like you're in a big cavernous room, just like the old days. People standing around a single microphone. That microphone can be your phone. You don't have to make it complicated. You're recording in close proximity. You'll then cut it down using free editorial software you can find anywhere on the web, and then you can animate it with stills and scabbed footage from movies and other stock libraries. You can't steal for commerce, but you can use clips to demonstrate your skills. Now, if you're going to do this, you want to make sure you're driving the executive and hiring manager to a web page where they can get your phone, your email, your site, whatever, so they can contact you. Like I said, I wouldn't blast my phone number or email on the web, but you can use a phone forwarder for like $10 a month and free using Gmail. So what are executives looking for in your material? How do you get their attention? They're looking for an ability to get their interest. That is as basic as it is. These people see so much content on a daily basis. If something is interesting and sticks out, they will sit up in their chair and they will go, okay, what's that? I want to talk to those people. And that can be had pretty easily. You do it by telling good story, strong structure, and some advanced tricks. CG, sound design, framing. When I say framing, I'm talking about shooting, cinematography, lighting, that kind of thing. Editorial. All of that demonstrates a skill and experience and an understanding of what's on TV and on a screen now, not 10 years ago. If you're emulating The Godfather, good luck. No one's going to go, oh, that's interesting. I want to know that guy. No, they're going to go, oh, fuck, we've seen this. We saw this in the 70s. And most of these executives might not even know what the hell you're even referencing. It doesn't have to be long. It can be short. You don't have to make a full feature. You just have to get the attention of the people who are watching your material. Ultimately, we're trying to distinguish ourselves from the other creatives out there. Everyone in development is looking for the thing that will break out. As I said earlier, it's about the breakout. The breakout gets replicated and copied in a copycat business. Every single development executive is looking for the thing that can break out. Research what's on the platform and research what's not working. Don't just look at the things that are working. Look at what isn't working. What have you seen out there that got like 12 views in the past year or got 100 views in the past 6 months? If your shit looks like that, then you got some more work to do. You're not at this level of creative that will break through. Look at the stuff that is breaking through, that's getting a ton of views, a ton of contact, a ton of engagement. Those are the kinds of things that your work should be looking like. And lastly, you got to show your work. I know creatives are really worried about getting ripped off and showing their material, but to use a crass phrase, if you don't lift your skirt, no one's going to know anything about you. You have to show your work. If you're worried about showing your best work, don't show your best ideas. Don't show the ideas you love. Only show what you're comfortable with and show what demonstrates your skill. You'll have to pick, you'll have to make a choice. But if you don't show your work, no one will know anything about you. And always, 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 when you put your material out there in the world, copyright it. Don't send it to the bullshit WGA registration fucking thing. That's not a valid use of cash. For an additional $10 or $20, you can file a Form PA with the Library of Congress for that same piece of material. The WGA registration is not enforceable. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. Move on. So, all that being said, in this work that we're doing here, in our networking, we're looking to break out and distinguish ourselves from the rest of the pack that's trying to do the same thing as you, trying to level up from wherever they are now into the next job, or trying to break into the industry from someone who's new. But at the end of the day, when you get into that job and when you sit in front of those executives and you do your informational interviews, you want to be a copycat as you enter the industry. Being a copycat and behaving like everybody else, behaving like the pack, as far as how the business operates, is the job. You have to play ball. But as a creative, you got to bring your creative chops. There's a fine line between being a copycat and how the business operates and being a creative and how you create content. They are different, and don't confuse the two.